Next on Currents News, the Trump impeachment trial is underway, and it's fueling a fierce argument in the Senate. It's the final countdown in Iowa for Democrats. National correspondent Christopher White is just back from the state with news about Catholic voters. And the Pope is talking American politics with some U.S. bishops. They're in town for their ad limina visits. Plus, angry people on the streets of San Juan. They're demanding the governor go after the discovery of emergency supplies. The news starts right now. Good evening, I'm Lydia Serrani. The trial of President Trump is now underway, and right from the start, senators argued over just how it should be conducted. The fight erupting even before prosecutors and Trump's defense team start their cases. Camilla Bernal is on Capitol Hill with the very latest.
The Senate will
As the Senate gets ready to begin the impeachment trial of President Donald Trump, there's still a fight over how it will proceed.
This is clearly an attempt to rig the trial.
Democrats accusing Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell of rushing the process and attempting to cover up President Trump's alleged wrongdoing.
It appears that Leader McConnell decided to go along with the president's desire to cover up his wrongdoing. Hook, line, and sinker.
And Republicans arguing the Senate process will be fair.
The Senate's fair process will draw a sharp contrast with the unfair and precedent-breaking inquiry that was carried on by the House of Representatives.
But reaffirming the Senate will not reinvestigate the president.
The House chose not to pursue the same witnesses they apparently would now like the Senate to pre-commit to pursuing ourselves. As I've been saying for weeks, nobody will dictate Senate procedure to United States senators.
This begins just the third presidential impeachment trial in U.S. history, following President Trump's impeachment on December 18th. Once the debate over the rules is complete, the next step in the trial is opening arguments, where the House impeachment managers and President Trump's legal team will each get 24 hours to present their case. On Capitol Hill, Camila Bernal, Currents News.
While all that happens on the Hill, the president was in Switzerland giving a speech to the World Economic Forum. He told an audience of the rich and powerful leaders in Davos that America is making great strides.
Today, I'm proud to declare that the United States is in the midst of an economic boom, the likes of which the world has never seen before. We've regained our stride, rediscovered our spirit, and reawakened the powerful machinery of American enterprise.
After he was done, Trump told reporters that his remarks were well received, with many leaders saying it was a statesman-like speech. At the same time, Pope Francis is telling the Davos delegates that it's their duty to place the good of humanity above power or profit. In his message sent out today, the Holy Father stressed the idea that human development will only flourish when everyone is included, and treating people as a means to an end is an injustice. Francis wrote, "The overriding consideration, never to be forgotten, is that we are all members of the one human family. The moral obligation to care for one another flows from this fact." The Pope's message was addressed to the chairman of the forum, Klaus Schwab. In Iowa, Democrats are swarming the state. The caucuses are fast approaching. That's when voters will weigh in for the first time on their presidential choices. Differences between the hopefuls are sharpening, especially when it comes to Social Security. With the Iowa caucuses 2 weeks away, the 2020 Democratic field out in full force. First stop in South Carolina, where the rivals marched arm in arm for yesterday's Martin Luther King holiday. Then many of them rushing to Iowa for separate events across the Hawkeye state as tensions simmered among the top tier of candidates. Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders facing off over Social Security. Biden accused the Sanders campaign of promoting a 2018 video, which takes the former vice president out of context by suggesting he wanted to cut the entitlement program.
But it is simply a lie, that video that's going around. And I'm looking for his campaign to come forward and disown it, but they haven't done it yet.
Sanders is defending his criticism of Biden's record on Social Security.
On the issue of Social Security, time and time again, Joe Biden has been clear in supporting cuts to Social Security.
But Biden's also issuing a warning about how a Sanders or Elizabeth Warren nomination would affect other Democrats on the ballot come November.
I'm just asked a rhetorical question. Bernie's the top of the ticket in North and South Carolina, or Warren's the top of the ticket. How many Democrats down the line you think are going to win?
The Iowa caucuses will be held on February 3rd. The winner is expected to gain momentum going into the nation's first primary in New Hampshire a week later. Hillary Clinton, who battled against Senator Bernie Sanders in the 2016 Democratic primary, ripped into her former rival by declaring nobody likes him. In a new TV documentary set to air next month, Clinton also said that no one wants to work with the Vermont senator, that he got nothing done and is a career politician. Clinton won't commit to endorsing or campaigning for Sanders if he's the 2020 Democratic nominee. National correspondent for the Tablet and Crux, Christopher White, is back from Iowa, where he was taking the pulse of Catholic voters there in the state. He's here with us now on what he has found. Welcome, Christopher.
Great to be back with you, Lydia.
Now, Christopher, the executive director of the Iowa Catholic Conference, talked about how the Iowa caucuses are completely different than the other primary voting systems in the rest of the country. Can you talk to me more about that?
Yeah, so one of the things that we learned there is, Tom Chapman told us, it requires boots on the ground, really getting people to commit to a full evening of engaging in conversation rather than just quickly going into a voting booth and casting your vote. Here's what he had to say.
Our caucus process really is about getting the activists fired up. It's different than a primary system. You're really trying to get bodies to show up on a particular night in January or February in Iowa, which isn't always easy. And so you're going to find that the people who are interested in that are the people who are most active and interested on issues. And I think for a lot of people, they bring their Catholic faith with them.
It's really quite a public event. You have to say who you're voting for rather than a sort of private act, and so it requires real commitment.
And Chapman also said that it's really important for Catholics to also get involved in the political process, correct?
That's right, exactly.
Now, let's take a listen to hear what he had to say.
It's part of who we are as Catholics to go out and be Eucharist in the world, and I think a lot of people take that seriously.
The Catholic leadership is obviously meant to be nonpartisan. How does he navigate this?
Yeah, so one of the things that he does in his capacity with the Catholic Conference is he works on a whole host of issues, from abortion to food stamps to immigration reform. And it's his job, he says, to amplify the work of the church across the board so that he can work with Republicans, he can work with Democrats, he can work with those that say they have no real political party, and elevate the principles that really animate and motivate Catholics. To use his language, he said, I think about Pope Francis, and he says the Pope calls us to create a culture of encounter, and I'm doing that across the political divide.
What other major issues did he say Catholics are facing in the state right now?
Well, beside the hot button issues of abortion and immigration, I mean, he really pointed to sort of health care, expanding access to that, and just sort of general economic issues, particularly when it comes to the farmers there in Iowa.
Thank you so much, Christopher White, national correspondent for the Tablet and Crux. Thank you for
Lydia.
being here with us. Brooklyn Borough President Eric Adams is under fire tonight for telling New Yorkers to go back to Iowa and other places too. Critics are accusing him of playing the race card at Reverend Al Sharpton's Martin Luther King Day event. Adams blasted new arrivals to the city for bringing gentrification to neighborhoods.
Go back to Iowa, you go back to Ohio. New York City belongs to the people that was here and made New York City what it is. And I know I'm a New Yorker. I protected this city. I have a right to put my voice in how the city should run.
Adams was a cop before he became a politician. He complained newcomers are hiking up the rents, making it unaffordable for people who already live there. Back to the past, video of a New York City subway car covered in graffiti was released by the New York City Police Benevolent Association. The PBA says this train is a sign of decay. Police officers worked so hard to eradicate back in the 70s and 80s. The PBA also claims that taggers did this knowing there are no longer consequences due to the new bail reform law. According to the MTA, the train has now been pulled from service. There's outrage in Puerto Rico tonight after the discovery of emergency supplies that had been hidden away for years. The island is reeling from a series of earthquakes and still recovering from Hurricane Maria. Currents News' Emily Druby reports on what's being demanded.
Protesters filled the streets of San Juan, calling for the resignation of Governor Wanda Vasquez. The demonstration follows the discovery of emergency supplies sent 2 years ago after Hurricane Maria. Everything from water to tarps found in a warehouse on Puerto Rico's southern coast. Supplies desperately needed when the country was recovering from the devastating hurricane. Governor Vasquez issued a statement saying it was unforgivable that the resources were kept in the warehouse. Following the discovery, she fired Puerto Rican Emergency Management Director Carlos Acevedo and 2 other officials. Relief workers are throwing out expired items but distributing everything else to areas affected by the recent series of earthquakes.
We are also in coordination with other municipalities because there are a lot of equipment here that can be utilized and prepared for preparedness in preparation for the upcoming hurricane season.
Dozens of aftershocks and tremors have damaged parts of Puerto Rico and forced over 8,000 people to temporarily live in outdoor shelters.
Fear knocked on my door, but I opened the door and I confronted it, and I'm still alive.
In response to the protest, Vasquez took to Twitter writing, "I respect the constitutional right of citizens to demonstrate. There is no need for the use of the shock force at this time." The governor has called back 3 squadrons of shock force police originally dispatched to keep the protests under control. Emily Druby, Currents News.
Breaking news tonight about that deadly virus that originated in China. An American is now infected. A man in Washington state is the first confirmed case here in the United States. Scientists in China are trying to contain the mystery disease that hits the respiratory system. This Saturday starts a Lunar New Year. Hundreds of millions of people will be on the move and possibly spreading the illness. So far, at least 6 people have died and hundreds more have been sickened in Asia. There's a lot more news headed your way. Pope Francis is talking politics and a whole lot more with American bishops who came to see him. He's a survivor, but still remembers the screams at night, the story of what it was like in a Nazi death camp. And on her feast day, the story of a martyr whose courage still shines as an example today. Do you have a story idea or want to share a tip with us? Email us at newstips@desalesmedia.org or call our 24-hour number 718-517-3122. We'll be right back. Pope Francis is talking about hot topics in America with bishops who are located in the heartlands of the country. We're learning about what's being said from the bishops who were there. Currents News' Tim Harfman reports.
Holy, holy, holy. Pope Francis is speaking with U.S. bishops over the past few days about key issues in America, including politics, abortion, and immigration. The bishops from the Midwest and Southwest are in Rome for their ad limina visits and stressed abortion is considered, quote, the preeminent issue.
That word is carefully chosen, and because we want to avoid the perspective of the understanding that it's the only issue. It is not.
But ahead of this week's National March for Life, Archbishop Joseph Naumann, the U.S. Bishop's point man on pro-life, says Catholics cannot forget the right to life.
People may mistakenly think, well, that means that the abortion issue it becomes less important.
Another issue discussed with the Holy Father, immigration.
He gave some high praise to the bishops in the United States and our region for what we deal with immigrants. That's something that's close to his heart.
Francis also gave advice regarding U.S. politics. It shouldn't be their biggest priority.
He said, that's not our first duty. Our first duty is to pray and to teach the principles the church.
American bishops said Francis was attentive to issues in the U.S. and meeting with the pontiff was, quote, a great encouragement. Tim Harfman, Currents News.
Next Monday marks 75 years since the liberation of the Nazi death camp at Auschwitz. Ziggy Schipper was only 14 when he arrived. Now 90, he spends most of his time speaking out about what he saw. Melissa Bell talked with him and notes to viewers there are some images of Auschwitz that may be disturbing.
The screaming at night was just unbelievable. We still didn't understand why they didn't kill us and be finished. Why did we have to suffer so much?
Ziggy Schipper was only 14 when he arrived in Auschwitz-Birkenau in the summer of 1944. Now 90, he spends most of his time speaking about what he saw. Like the moment the doors of his cattle train opened onto the camp, some went straight to the gas chambers. For the others, the suffering was just beginning.
The guards came over to them and asked them to put the baby down. She wouldn't do it. So they tried to rip that baby out of her arms. And if they didn't succeed, they shot the woman and sometimes the baby as well. Why kill babies? Why don't you give them enough food? I ask the children when I speak, I ask the grown-ups, tell me something, have we learned? And everybody says no.
But these pictures had shocked the world 75 years ago. They were captured by Red Army soldiers as they liberated Poles, Russians, Romas, homosexuals and Jews. 90% of the 1.1 million people who died in the camp were Jewish.
It is both the scale and the depth of human suffering here that are really hard to fathom. However, what happened behind these fences is still within living memory, but only just. With Auschwitz marking the 75th anniversary of its liberation, and with the recent rise in anti-Semitic attacks both in the United States and in locations here in Europe, the question is whether collective memory can ever last longer than a single lifetime.
These school kids are being shown around by Jeanette Kolinka, a 94-year-old French survivor of Birkenau. Isn't it difficult to come back? Asks one student. No, she replies, my feelings never made it out of here.
Hearing it from people that have lived it, that were like, this was a living hell. They were tortured. You really have to be tolerant and accept people as they are, because nobody deserves this.
It is that message of broader tolerance that drives Ziggy to speak as often as he can about what he saw.
I said, whatever you do, don't hate. Hate is the worst thing you can do. Never mind what nationality they are, what religion. To me, everybody's the same. We are just human beings.
And yet, anti-Semitism in the United States is at near historic levels, according to the Anti-Defamation League. And worldwide, anti-Semitic attacks rose by 13% in 2018, according to Tel Aviv University.
It's not for me that I'm worried, for my children, for my grandchildren, for my great-grandchildren. But, you know, we mustn't give up. You've got to think it'll change, you've got to. But we need the people to do something about it. And that's why we speak. We must not forget.
And that was Melissa Bell reporting from Auschwitz. Hundreds of survivors will head there on Monday for the official anniversary commemorations. The terror gang Boko Haram has reportedly killed a top Christian leader in Nigeria. Lawan Andimi had been the head of the Christian Association of Nigeria. He was kidnapped on January 2nd during a Boko Haram raid on the town of Michika. The Christian group had appealed to government leaders to help win his release before he was executed. Still to come on Currents News, the story of one of the youngest saints in the church. She's a profile in courage. And the tallest statue of the Blessed Virgin Mary is almost ready. And before we go to break, a programming note, our special series on human trafficking continues this Thursday with deeply personal stories of survival.
I cried, I was homeless, I was raped, I was all these things before I got to like where I'm at now.
How courageous survivors are giving voice to a silent epidemic. Join us for part 2 of Human Trafficking Exposed Thursday on Currents News. A new children's book is being released that America's bishops hope will help in the fight against racism. Everyone Belongs is the title, and it's about a young refugee and his family coming to the United States. The picture book is for kids 5 to 12 and helps them see racism through the lens of history and faith. It's available on Amazon. Net TV is New York's Catholic station and will televise live coverage of the big March for Life activities happening this week. The opening mass of the National Prayer Vigil for Life will be broadcast live on Thursday, starting at 5:30 from the National Shrine of the Immaculate Conception. And complete coverage of the march in Washington will be on the air Friday, starting at 12 noon. She's one of Christianity's youngest and earliest saints, Agnes, who was martyred in Rome. She's also a shining example of courage that still inspires today. Today is her feast day. Melissa Butts reports from the church named in honor of Agnes.
The Church of St Agnes is visited daily by hundreds of tourists strolling around Rome's Piazza Navona. But it has a secret inside, the head of one of the youngest Catholic saints and martyrs. It was in this spot in 303 AD that St Agnes was killed as one of the first martyrs during the persecution against Christians in Rome. She was accused of refusing the love of the prefect of Rome's son. For this reason, she was imprisoned and initially stripped naked. After this, her hair grew to cover her body. She was accused of witchcraft after the hair incident and was thrown into a fire. The fire didn't harm Agnes either. Her hair once again protected her from the flames. It wasn't until a sword pierced her throat that she died. Her remains were then kept at a church in Rome for centuries, until 1918. At that point, Pius X separates her head from the remains of the body. He gifts it to this church here, St Agnes in Piazza Navona, because this is where her death took place. Here, her skull is still venerated today, protected in a silver case with her statue and name written across the top. It's visited by reams of tourists passing through the church, praying for the young girl's intercession. While they pray, a guest book lies next to the altar for pilgrims to sign. It's a way each person can connect with one of the earliest Christian martyrs and leave a part of themselves in the eternal city. From the heart of Rome, the patron of young girls' memory lives on, especially on January 21st, the day the Catholic Church celebrates her feast day. In Rome, Melissa Butts, Currents News.
Finally tonight, standing more than 300 feet high, the tallest statue of the Virgin Mary anywhere in the world is expected to be completed soon in the Philippines. The Marian monument, known as the Mother of all Asia, also called the Tower of Peace, is located on Monte Maria, which literally translates to Mary's Mount, at the pilgrimage site in Batangas City, Philippines. It's expected to be completed next year to celebrate the 500th anniversary of the arrival of Christianity in the Philippines. And that's Currents News. I'm Lydia Serrana. Thank you so much for joining us, because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time. Good night.